Okay, finally, a big change. Let's do some contrast and go to spirit. Okay, I'm going to be talking about how to pray, how to have more faith, and also I'm going to talk about how these tips that I'm giving related to prayer actually really apply to the way you study scripture. So, there's something very creative about the human mind. Let's think about what happens every time something is created. You have an idea in your mind, and now you go forward and you move things forward to create something new. So maybe you imagine that I want to draw a drawing. I want to draw a cat. You have that picture of a cat in your mind, and now you put that on paper. The forms, they come out of your head. They start as an idea in your head. And now we are told in the Bible that faith and praying as if you already have something, already being grateful for something that you don't yet have. This is advice we're given to improve things. And now it's very clear that the first part of achieving anything is to have the idea in your mind. Everybody knows this. It's quite clear. If you don't have any idea of what direction you're going to go, you're probably not going to go in the direction that you want to go, because you don't have any direction that you want to go. So this is very similar, these ideas. And therefore, I think faith is when you see something and it becomes so real to you, this idea. You have such internal confidence in something. You can just feel it. Everything in the world seems to be going against your idea, what you're trying to achieve. Everything in the world seems to be going completely against your hope for the future, your hope maybe in eternal life, or your hope for illumination, depending on what religion you believe in, these things. Everything seems to be going against it, but you keep that strength, that internal strength, and you say, I'm going to embody that change before it actually happens. I'm going to have complete faith in that. And this is how someone should pray. So, is this just a matter of thinking about something and saying again and again, I have faith, I believe, I know that I'm going to achieve this, and things like this, saying again and again? It's not just that. You have to see it in your mind's eye. You have to hear sounds related to it. Even include your smell and your sense of touch. All of your senses. And this can be really powerful. This can be so powerful. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example that I believe to be very, very healthy. And we can think about this, like think about touching money and seeing money, and what does the sound of money clinking sound like? Oh, I'm going to win lots of money. It doesn't have to be things like physical things. Let's think about this exercise that I like to do. What you do, this is a very old exercise as well. I think it might even be Franciscan, and some Buddhists do very similar. So you imagine your spiritual teacher, like I would imagine Jesus, because I don't believe there's ever been a spiritual teacher who's topped the sacrifice and therefore completely just shown exactly what perfect humanity and perfect love is. So that's why I choose Jesus. And you imagine this person there in front of you as if they were teaching you. So I'm imagining what his face looks like. Imagine in the detail, most detail that you can. Imagine the hair, the texture of his hair. Imagine the skin color, exact same skin color, eye color. Imagine movements of the eyes, blinking, movement of the mouth, speaking, hands moving. What color are the clothes? What texture do the fibers have? Things like this. It's the most detail you can see. And imagine the bright colors and the specific colors mixed with the textures. And this really helps. If you think you can't imagine things, just focus really on the depth and the details, like the small fibers in the clothes, the texture, as if you were even feeling it. So then you want to start to include what feeling. Maybe you shake his hand. Maybe the person now caresses you on the head, saying, "It's okay," caresses your face, pats you on the back, "It's okay, you can do it," things like that, connecting. You want to feel like you're really there with this person. And now you want to include sound, the sound of their voice speaking to you. You don't have to do exactly what they're saying. You could do, but you want to imagine the feeling of the words that they're saying. You can imagine some specific examples that they're saying. And now you've got this picture of a person in front of you. Now this person, you want them to be the epitome of perfection for you. Like you want them to be the person that you want to reflect. You want to be more like this person. So then you imagine a ray coming from their mind, from their head, out, up, 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 into the air. It's pure white light, this ray, like a rainbow arcing over, and it comes down onto your head and fills your mind with their mind. You think like them. You're becoming them. Becoming, in my case, becoming more like Jesus. Feel that love entering me. I feel that willing full sacrifice coming into me, that courage. You feel it all. Your mind changes. Your mind is now the mind of a person who can completely control their thoughts and can control their actions. They're the master of their whole being, of their body. Okay. Now you imagine from their mouth comes another ray that comes and lands in your throat, from their throat to your throat. Now this is a red ray. Connects. And their words now are entering your voice. Your words are becoming their words. The things that they say. You imagine this. There's things that you would say. Allow ideas to come to mind, what you would say to people. Really feel the effect of what this is, of what is changing. And now you imagine from their heart, from their chest comes another ray. Big blue arc. Entering into your heart as their actions, their courage enters you. You can now act as they act. You can now do as they do. Now allow ideas of those actions to come. Allow yourself to feel what you would be doing, some of the actions you would want to do, some of the actions that they would do. Now that you have this new strength. Okay, so what is that? This is prayer. This is a type of prayer that's a lot more real. And it's effective because it's more real, because you're taking the advice of what it says in the scriptures. You're taking advice that all world religions actually give. And you're seeing and being grateful for something. You're seeing and acting as if you were someone. You think, how would I act if I was this person? And then you actually feel it, what it's like. You see yourself doing it. And that's why it works. So now let's go on to how this can actually be applied to studying the scriptures. Now, in the New Testament is written from a Greek perspective. It's very interesting that the Old Testament is written from a Hebrew perspective. So the mindset of these people that were writing the New Testament was Greek. You can actually, this is a little tip I'm going to give, you can actually learn so much about how to study the Bible and the mindset, how to study the New Testament, from reading works of Plato and other Greek philosophers. So anyway, the way that you want to approach these scriptures is with their mindset. And for the Greeks, there are two words that I want to explain that explain truth. So you have logos, which most Christians will know as the word. Like, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. And then there was nothing that was created that wasn't created through him. So this word logos here means truth. It also means a word said, and it can also mean something that's talked about. So it's quite a big word. But in this sense, we're going to think about the truth in a story. Let's think about these stories that we read in the Bible. Now, the logos of these things, let me read an example so that you can understand. Now, in Galatians 2, verse 20, Paul writes, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Now, from a logos perspective here, we understand that something has changed in his life. Now, Christ lives in me. Now, something's changed. Able to live in a new way. He's got a new connection with God. And it also says that Christ gave himself. Christ loved him and gave himself for him. And we know that this is logos. This is actually the truth and what happened. The situations, the real events that happened. But when I say real, I shouldn't really say real, because the other word we're going to talk about is also real. Okay, which is mythos. Now, when you hear the word mythos, we all think about myth or fiction, but this is not what the Greeks actually meant by mythos at all. Mythos can be something that's fictitious, but it doesn't have to be, and to be honest, most of the time it isn't. What mythos is referring to is the truth through symbolisms, the truth through examples. It's like explaining using metaphors and things like that that reveal truth, and that's what mythos is talking about. So when we want to see read this again from a mythos perspective, where we're thinking about that, we would read, I have been crucified with Christ. Now, when you read this, we're not thinking, oh, Paul actually was there at the same moment that Christ was crucified, next to him being crucified. This is not what we think. We understand it from a mythos perspective, that this is him explaining something that's true, but true in a symbolic sort of way. True in something that's beyond what you can feel and touch. It's beyond that. It's true, but it's far beyond that. And so you combine these two ideas together, logos and mythos, And then you have what the Bible actually teaches, using both of those things together to communicate truth. So let's look at an example, another example. Acts 12 is about Herod attacking the church and also Peter being put in prison and what happened, how he became free from prison. And there are so many details. Like you'll read in verse 2 of Acts 12, Herod killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. You wonder, with the sword? Why doesn't it just say he killed John? Why do they put that detail there? And it goes on, and then when he had arrested Peter, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 squads of soldiers to keep him, intending to bring him before the people after Passover. So we think about these details, 4 squads of soldiers. Why do we need to know that? And why do we also need to know about when he intended to bring him before the people after Passover? These things. There are these details there. This is part of the mythos, why it's there. These details are there to reveal to us a truth. So, first of all, I want you to think about what this sounds like when I'm talking about this. What happens? Peter is put in prison. Think about what this sounds like. Can you relate this to some other event or things that happened? So, basically, Herod has arrested Peter, delivered him to 4 squads of soldiers. Now we see this as before Passover. Peter was therefore kept in prison, verse 5, but constant prayer was offered to God for him by the church. So he's in prison, and what the prisons were, they were these underground subterranean rock structures, like dug out in caves under the ground. So Peter's being kept in this place under the ground. And Herod was about to bring him out that night, when that night Peter was sleeping, bound with 2 chains between 2 soldiers, and the guards before the door were keeping the prison. So there are these details, 2 chains between 2 soldiers. So when you're reading this, you're supposed to be seeing it in the same way that I was talking about when we did the visualization prayer exercise. You're supposed to be seeing these things, see them and feel them and touch them. So think about that. What does he look like, Peter? Peter was sleeping, bound with 2 chains, like this, between 2 soldiers, and the guards before the door were keeping the prison. Okay. Now behold, an angel of the Lord stood by him, and a light shone in the prison, and he struck Peter in the side and raised him up, saying, "Arise quickly," and the chains fell off his hands. So think about this. Peter's being struck in the side, and he arises. Okay, then it goes on and says, gird yourself, tie on your sandals. So he's without clothes. We see now the angel tells him to put his clothes on, put your garment on and follow me. So now we realize retrospectively we can look back at what we were imagining before and think, okay, Peter didn't have any clothes on at all. So this shame, he's there tied between two chains, he's without any clothes, and there are 2 guards there, 1 on each side, and then an angel strikes him in the side, and then he arises and he starts to leave. When they passed the first and the second guard posts, they came to an iron gate that leads to the city, which opened to them of its own accord, and they went out and went down one street, and immediately the angel departed from him. So this is interesting. First and second guard posts, and then an iron gate. So there's three different levels there. And when Peter had come to himself, because this must have been quite a an amazing experience that he didn't even realize that it was real. Now I know for a certain, he says, that the Lord has sent his angel and has delivered me from the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the Jewish people. So you see, the Jewish people were the people that were expecting him to be put to shame after Passover in front of all of them by Herod. Okay? So when he had considered this, that he's been delivered, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying, and Peter knocked at the door of the gate, and a girl named Rhoda came to answer. So basically, Peter goes to the house of Mary, okay, a Mary, and the first person he goes to is Mary, this Mary. And he knocks on the door, and a girl comes to the door. She recognized Peter's voice. Because of her gladness, she did not open the gate, but she ran in and announced that Peter stood before the gate. And they said to her, "You are beside yourself." Yet she kept insisting that it was so. So they said, "It is his angel." So basically, Peter goes to represent himself at Mary's house. A girl doesn't believe him. And then she goes to the other people to tell them, "I've seen Peter, I've seen him." And they don't believe him at all. They don't believe her at all. And then they see him and they are astonished. And then you want to think about these things and think, what does that represent? Have you realized what's going on? How is that related to what we just read before? I have been crucified with Christ in Galatians 2:20. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. So I have been crucified with Christ. Here's the mythos. Did you notice? Peter was shamefully with no clothes, stretched out between two chains like this, two guards, one on each side, just like when Jesus died. So he's there, no clothes, same position, underground. Jesus was put in a tomb underground, afterwards too. And this was like going into the ground and the rebirth. This is also pictured in Jesus' birth too. When he was born, he was put in a manger, which was in a block of rock, basically, put in a block of rock. And this would have looked like a sepulchre. I don't know if I can even say that. Okay, a block of rock underground in a cave. It would have been where the animals are kept. So he's like in a sepulchre when he's born, underground in a tomb. When he was born, it's already shown there. So then Peter is also shown in the same situation. And he's struck in the side by the angel, just like Jesus was struck in the side. He goes through he goes past two guards and a gate, which is like 3 days that Jesus was in the tomb. And then let me just read so that I don't miss anything. Yeah. He goes to Mary just like Jesus went to Mary first of all. And then a girl actually hears his voice at the door, and she goes to tell all of the other people and the men, and they don't believe her, just like what happened when Jesus actually came to Mary first. So you see, this is the mythos. When it says in Galatians, I have been crucified with Christ, it actually means that in my life, a real experience has happened. That means that I have actually had the same experience that Christ had. I have been guided through this by God, and therefore I have now been crucified, have died, and I am now free without sin because I have been able to go through the same experience that Jesus went through, and I was given that opportunity by God. So you see, this is the mythos. And the way that you actually realize these things is by doing exactly what we were doing. First of all, imagining. You read and you make sure that you see things and you feel things. If there's a detail, go into that detail, see it exactly how it is, and hear what people say. If there's details, make sure that you don't miss them. Do you remember what I said about visualizing things and going to the big details? So going into the small details. When you want to visualize something clearly, go into the small details. And when somebody wants you to visualize something clearly, they give you the small details. So this is how you know that scriptures is intended for that.